check
Yeah,
my,
that's, this end has been fine.
mailbox in there once in a
But,
while.
and I can tell.
I told this in my Christmas card.
It's too long, you should find out.
That's the only trouble that's happened, and I never.
Oh, well.
And I was, yeah.
Yeah, no, that,
So, yeah, it was a great trip. So happy to be back.
How were things?
Good.
Yeah. How was the, yesterday? Busy or no? Wasn't bad?
What did we do yesterday?
Yesterday, we were pretty much good. I mean, I'm sure you saw the traffic around town.
Yeah,
My brother was up at it, he was just north of Lancaster. It was 6 hours to get past Franconia Notch.
I saw the thing on the news for the traffic.
I was tracking him and texting him, like, hey, you better stop for dinner. Nope, we've been sitting in a line of traffic for 6 hours. We should have taken, what, 45 minutes maybe?
Oh, yeah.
We really did one yesterday, right?
all right, so does everyone have an,
Two.
the minutes from the
Yeah,
last
we did in the
meeting?
morning and then.
Have you seen those?
They
They went out a while ago, I just,
That's good.
no,
They
that's
were
the old
busy
one.
then.
Yeah.
I figured there'd be
Well,
car
that's
accidents.
nice.
today.
Do
Yeah,
work.
I guess it's something
Okay.
on that.
Nothing serious.
All right, I'm sorry.
Nothing serious. Oh, that's
I'll
good.
get it before.
Okay.
I was thinking about going there.
And then she flew.
That was
Training.
lunch from the
I don't think.
I watched it from Bamboo. We went to the top of Bamboo and I sat there with
Oh, yeah.
one of the other guys. We sat in the tailgate of a truck.
Just signed both in.
Perfect place to watch it.
Yeah.
It was great. It was awesome. Nice and high.
Yeah, it was a little better if you were in
There you go. All right, so this is the agenda. Do you have an agenda for today?
I have it on my phone, but
You have one?
I'll take what you write on.
Jean?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, anybody else need an agenda for today? No?
Thank you.
Bob?
I got it.
You got one? Thank you for putting this together too. All right, it is 4:30. I'll call the meeting to order. And the minutes went out a while ago. So if anyone hasn't seen them recently, there's copies of them here, but they went out right after the meeting before, so. If you want a couple minutes to read them, or do you want to make a motion to approve, anybody?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, budget update. Sue, you had sent the budget update
Well,
yesterday.
I do. The total income so far is 138,833.28, which $1,800 and change belongs, it is in the donation account.
Mm-hmm.
The expenses, 104,113. Of that, the biggest hit on that is the payroll,
Mm-hmm.
which is, for the first quarter, is 87,137.15.
So I noticed that you don't have it compared to the budget. Do you usually do it compared to the budget mid-year, or do you just do your financials this way?
I just do this. I don't put a budget into the QuickBooks, because I don't. I mean, I
Fair enough.
At this point, it really isn't significant because we haven't been doing it long enough to figure out.
Are you surprised by the amount of collections so far for 3 months?
I'm happy.
Yeah, let's say pleasantly surprised. I was gonna say, it
Right.
looked like the numbers were pretty good sum for the first 3 months of the year.
Well,
Well, we doubled down on it a little bit. When we're in the station, if we answer the phone, because we're not a manned station, it's a little difficult, but when we can answer the phone, we can nail down specifics. Like I got a call today, somebody's trying to pay us some money. They can't pay us the way the verbiage is, because it said it was an emergency call, but she was bedridden, and that's a contradiction, and somebody's bedridden somewhere. But if we recode it, then they can pay it. but we gotta be the answer to that call and find out exactly what they're looking for.
Right,
So when we're there, we can answer them.
so
And
how,
some of this also, this intake is from December, from November and December that we're actually
Right.
getting paid for in this year.
but it still goes into this year's income, so that it's, again, it's a nice number to see.
Right.
And then as far as, like you said, the payroll being larger than, or, you know, being the largest dollar amount, which it always is, how is that looking compared to what you budgeted for the year with the change in your pay structure?
It's probably pretty much about the quarter of what was budgeted. I wish I could say it was because we have more people, but it really isn't. It's because Rick and Rob and Tom are doing all the work.
So that was gonna be my other question, is how is the staffing going with the new pay rate, pay
Um,
structure?
It hasn't changed too much, really, in either direction. In January, there was probably 80 hours more covered with the on-shift calls. March and February were slightly lower by 10 or 20 hours, but about the same.
But do you think
kind
the
of
uptick
wash.
in, is after the budget was passed, or you changed the pay rate earlier?
The pay rate changed at January
Yeah.
1st. Yep. And we announced that to everybody on January, or I forget if it was on or right before January 1st. So it's a small, or yeah, not really much change at all.
Mhm.
Like Sue said, a lot of the shifts have been taken by Tom, who's currently is in an A EMT course, which has cut back on the number of hours he can work, which is part of that being a little bit down the last 2 months. So he's been up in Gorham 2 nights a week and then 1 weekend a month or something like that.
But personnel-wise, it runs about the same. It's right around 17 people
Right.
are doing the work. But like I said, with these three, they're doing all of the work. Well, not all of it, but they come in almost every shift, let's put it that way.
So what are your plans then?
We cover it by default, same plans we've had for the last 42 years.
I really don't.
That's not really what you wanna be doing though, it's just the way it
So,
is,
it's
so.
just, yeah, well,
Have you talked to, any of the volunteers about why they aren't signing on shifts, if the pay
Yes.
didn't make a
and
difference?
you know why they aren't? They have jobs.
I think partially because of how long a lot of them have been doing it and what the pay rates were before.
Mhm.
Most of them aren't doing it for the money to start with, the people
Right.
that we have now. So that's not as much of an incentive for them. I know I do have somebody that I'm talking to who's on Cranmore Ski Patrol,
Mhm.
who they're just finishing up for the season and we're trying to get him involved. And hopefully he'll be starting to take a good number of shifts. At least in that off period.
Time is a valuable commodity.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is, and sadly, it's, you know, even if we paid them at minimum wage, which actually it kind of works out to be that way, they still need another job.
Right.
You know, even if they took shifts every single week, they
Yes, it's
can't make the
technically a
payments, you know, they
volunteer,
can't live on it.
right.
So I'm not
But I
sure-
don't think that was our intention, right, with the pay change, was to have it being a living wage.
No, but
But
just
What
make
was
it
the
more-
intention on your end? I'm curious to that.
to try to change
No,
the,
because I mean, what you did was what I wanted to do 20 years ago and we were shut down. And then 20 years later, somebody else comes along and says, hey, we're not trying it this way. And, you know, it's the same thing, only different, really. There are a few people making money and there's a lot of people that are getting screwed.
well, I think that just, you know, I wasn't here 20 years ago
I know.
to have that decision, but, you know, I think anything that we can do to try to change the mix, hoping that it will create a different philosophy in recruiting
Right.
and retaining the volunteers. You know, you try something new and see if it works. If it's costing us more money, but we're getting the same results,
Mhm.
you know,
But where do we go from there? I mean, if at half of the year, we're not getting any more results, it's still costing us double the amount, what
Right.
do we do?
and are you collecting more money to cover the costs
Mhm.
of the increased salary?
I
Or because
can't
of
tell you
that?
at this point, you
Yeah.
know, I can't really tell you.
But I
at
mean,
this
that's
point.
where you get the justification too, is if you say, well, my salaries did increase, but we're still paying the same folks. we're just paying them different shifts. But at the same time, we were able to answer more calls, bill more hours, bill more jobs, bill more cases, whatever, I don't have to call them jobs, bill more incidents to cover those costs. Is it effective in that matter? And again, maybe you can't answer that today, but maybe that's where we look at it as it benefited because we were able to do that.
Right,
And it's gonna change workers' comp.
yeah, it's hard to say.
It's gonna change the insurance quite a bit.
We still have issues with, the attitude at our fire station. We still have issues with that. We still have people who will not take a shift
Right.
during the day, during the week, which hobbles us to a degree. I'm not saying, I don't know how significant it is, but I do know it's a problem.
And I don't see a resolution to that any time, so.
Maybe once you eclipse this, you got it worked out okay.
Is there anything else that you're noting on the budget? I know the supplies number was a little high at 11,000, so was that something that was purchased at the beginning of the year?
What the heck was that?
Some vehicle repairs.
I
We've had more calls.
can look at it.
So we're up about 14% on total runs. That's part of that. I would guess entirely.
Yeah, she wanted to know what the supplies were.
I have,
Yeah.
I'll look it up. I can't recall.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think the 14% is the totality of that, but that's definitely contributing.
Okay.
What did you buy? We bought the Locust last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we've had to buy a lot of different ID things and things that expire, things that, you know,
And I'm not
certain
even
things
like
last.
challenging it, just questioning it
Yeah.
because it seemed high at the beginning of the year, so.
And it's gonna be a little higher after today because we had some work done on one of the trucks and stuff, so, but you gotta do it.
Mhm.
I do have one question or comment regarding the payroll, however. I mean, again, on the agenda is the full-time director, and I hope that you're aware if that position comes about, that is going to be on top of this
Correct. We did.
$338,000
Yeah.
a year. Okay.
Any other questions for anyone on the numbers?
I have a question.
Yeah.
There was a statement made just a moment ago by saying we're paying more, we're getting the same results. What were we looking for by paying more, and why are we not getting it?
Well, it's costing us the same, we're paying more, but it's costing us the same, maybe that's what I should have worded. Before, we were doing $35 for a 12-hour shift, then it went to $17.50 for a 6-hour shift, because we thought maybe people would take a dinner shift or something, so somebody else could maybe go out and eat. It hasn't really worked. It works a little bit for a couple of people, but for the rest of the people, it doesn't work at all. And, but it's the same amount of money, we're doing more calls, so it's more work, but it's more money as well. But now it's $50 for a 6-hour shift, so it's a significant increase.
Big increase.
Right.
Well, we were hoping, what we were hoping was that people would sign up for shifts
Right.
and then get paid less to go on the calls, but they'd have more availability than the same characters every single time.
So the less they go on calls, when we have more than one call. Kevin Bennett is a rock star, Peter Braun, another rock star, there's a bunch of people we can get on the speed dial and say, hey, we got a bid to go to Portland that happens to be a local, would like to take it. And we don't take anything if we don't have town coverage.
Right.
You know, we will always help somebody from Bartlett or Jackson if we can. And we've been very lucky, we've been able to do it. We do turn down probably 50% of the calls we're asked to do. Like yesterday, hey, you go to Hempstead? Not bad. You know, you couldn't get there.
Yeah.
Traffic. You'd be there for 12 hours getting there. So we do say no to a lot of things, but when we subsidize some of those calls, like taking a kid to Hempstead, or maybe yesterday was Parkland, actually, we didn't go, we did go to Portland. But when we reach out to Kevin Bennett, he always says yes, or actually John has stepped up quite a bit, he's done a bunch of those, even though he kind of left the fire department. We have a backup team, and when they take a call and they get less money, it's kind of hurts. If they were getting $70, it sort of took this thing out of that. So they're the ones that are taking the deal.
But did that answer your question though? Because as far as,
Well, I mean, it's an answer. I don't think it's what I wanna hear right now, but I guess at the point where we're at with the situations we have, it's gonna have to be the way it is.
yeah, because there were two folks, well, go ahead.
So,
Barbie, you can talk.
Yeah, I think part of it, at least my thought process behind it, was be able to bring in some new people and, you know, not be paying them $35 for a 12-hour shift.
Right,
Kind of show them that they can make a little bit of money at least doing it.
right.
And I think partially with when we put it in place being January 1st, anybody who does seasonal work, things like that, working at the ski hills, already had something lined up for then through now.
Right.
So the way I see it, we're kind of getting into the period where we can start grabbing some of those people.
And the other challenge is the state of New Hampshire, because when you apply for an EMS license and you have to have a license to practice medicine, you've been through that process. You gotta get fingerprinted, you have to do a background check. We've got one poor guy that's actually paid for a background check 3 times now, and they're still going around with it because his name was, he had a 4-letter first name, and they wanted it to be multiple letters. On his passport, it gave us the simple name. On his driver's license, it gave us the simple name. But on the background check, they said, no, it can't be this name, it's gotta be the full, and that's not his name. So we went through that. Now, he's been almost a year trying to get licensed to work with us. Is he ever going? Probably not, because he's probably pretty discouraged with it at this point. And that's happened to several people.
Mm.
You know, they've gone, we lost 2 that went to North Star over in Maine, because they can get work. And they're still working with us. They'll come over and spend a day or 2 during the week once in a while. But so one of them's trying to get into nursing school, so she's talking a little bit too. But ironically, they're great with the transfers because they know Maine, they work for Maine Medical, working with North Star, so they got all the keys to all the doors. So it's very helpful to us.
How do we generally try to recruit?
I don't know if you figure out, like the state of New Hampshire, because they've got a recruitment retention program, and they make such a big deal of it, as well as mental health. And none of it works. They just pretend it works.
So it's partially word of mouth and, you know, talking to people. It's a relatively small community of
Yeah.
emergency services and things like that. We also preset some students from Solo who come in and do clinical time with us and try to grab some of them if they're local. And
What about nursing students?
Most of them are fairly busy.
we haven't really explored that very well, very much, but
Where's the local nursing school?
I'm just throwing things out, I don't,
You know, we got a bunch, 7 became doctors, 4 or 5 would become nurses. I mean, and once they do that, they're not gonna hang out with us anymore. I mean,
yeah.
they're
The
busy.
shifts they
Just-
cover.
yeah. Just
Good
throwing it
thought.
out.
And it comes back to if they're gonna be doing shifts overnight especially,
Yeah,
they need somewhere to stay in town.
right.
Right.
So we still have the housing
Becomes
issue.
Yeah.
So are we using social media or anything to put it, I'm asking you because I don't, I know that you guys are really into that and stuff like that, so I'm just asking.
I'm not.
I know you're not, that's why I'm asking.
We haven't done
I know I'm
any,
not.
Yeah.
any like recruitment pushes or anything like that on social media. For a long time, we didn't have very active presence at all on social media. The last couple months, I've tried to do just a little bit, bits and pieces. Every couple weeks, post something just so it's active, but no recruitment or anything like that yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Alright.
To go back to the 11,000, we're spending over $1,000 a month for fuel.
So that's under supplies?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had to get a battery for the striker cot, that was $1,000. The rest of it is just miscellaneous, oxygen,
Got you.
nitrous,
Yep.
paper, you know,
Consumable
supplies,
stuff.
just consumable
Okay.
supplies.
Okay.
So, you know, usually at the beginning of the year, we stock up for whatever we need. And
So you're not
That can be,
anticipating it to
you know,
be
can be-
11,000 a quarter?
had a couple repairs for, we had to have flashes and a backup oxygen thing for the ambulance, and that was almost $1,000 for that.
Okay.
So just, you know, just little things add up.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. All right, anything else budget-wise? All right. Updated pay rate, was that included in what we were discussing? or
Yeah.
did you have any? Okay. Employee expectations.
Rick, I think you wanted to talk about that with expectations of people coming to training and possibly requirements.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we raise the rate and people still aren't coming to training, we ought to lower that rate for them at least. But then you get into multiple tiers. You know, it's like if you want a job, you have to make a percentage of the meetings.
Mhm.
And we have certain people that make almost none of them.
Right, and I think
Now,
you
if
talked
you're in
about-
college, it's one thing. If you're, you know, in a nursing program or
Right.
a radiology program or something else, you know, you're at least in the same thing. But when you're working and choose not to come, I don't think we should be paying you. Or if you have a 6-hour shift, you can only work 2 hours or 3 hours of it.
Mhm.
In the old days, when it was a 12-hour shift, if somebody needed to get out and buy groceries, they'd call and say, can you listen for a couple hours? That was easy.
Mhm.
But now when it's listen for a couple hours, it's a third of the shift, and I don't think it's fair.
No, I think you're right.
That's just me, though.
And we've been stricter about that, especially since the new pay rates went out.
Right,
So do we have a level of where if you go to these trainings, you're gonna get paid more, or we just blanket pay everybody the same whether they don't come or not?
At the moment, the pay rates are the same for what you're doing. Obviously, you're not getting paid, say, the same for a run versus coming to training or something like that.
right.
But at the moment, everybody's getting paid the same.
So should we think about curtailing that, if they don't go to training, if they don't, they gotta have some kind of incentive to go to training. Because we're just paying money for people to go, and then the other people get the same money when they don't go.
No, they don't, if they don't go to training, they don't get paid.
They don't get paid for the training.
No, I'm talking about when they go on calls and things of that
Right.
nature.
Yeah.
Right, and it's difficult because there's so much new equipment that people don't even have a clue
Right.
how to run. And
Right.
we don't know where to begin to make, I mean, we can say you have to be here,
Mhm.
but there's always, oh, I can't be here because I'm this, I'm that, or, you know, my kid's sick or whatever. So what do? You make it up, you have a makeup night, and then they have to come to do that? Or they can't be on shift? I mean, there's a,
I agree 1,000%, it's a very difficult thing to figure out. But
Mm.
there's gotta be some incentive
Right.
for people to
Mhm.
get trained to go and make the same money as the people who are taking the time to go to get
Mhm.
trained and going on these calls.
oh, we upped the training, from $10 an hour to $20 an hour to try to encourage people, but it didn't seem to make a difference.
And are those state requirements that you have to participate
The
in? this?
training?
Yeah.
So the state, or actually it's the National Registry, so the overarching
Mm.
body that governs most of EMS in the country, requires for the EMT level 40 hours of continuing education every 2 years. That is not, it's not necessary to be at your service. So especially post-COVID, a lot of that can be done online
Mhm.
and different places. So there's a requirement for training, but not the in-house.
But we're not
training
more
necessarily.
strict than anyone else would be if they wanted to be on their service, as far as requiring training.
Right.
We're the same, or,
Mhm.
and we pay $20
Right.
for training too.
Which I was against, honestly, I'll say that publicly, because I think that you're required to do a certain amount of training to stay certified, and if you're not doing it, you're not gonna stay certified, so it's your fault.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
I'm old and I think that way.
Well, no, I get it. What's that?
And we've had, for a while,
Training
it
as
was
far as the-
mandated that you take it through an organization. Or there was a certain criteria that had to be met before that training counted as eligible towards your national registry. But they've relaxed that so that now people can do it online. We used to pay for people to go for like a long weekend,
Yeah.
and then we said, no, we're gonna cover all the criteria for you to be recertified, so we're not paying for those. But most people now, they either do it online or they get it somehow. Just because if it was a regular full-time paid job, then you could mandate,
Right.
but because they're volunteers, I don't see any way to mandate it. I mean, we try to encourage it, but.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we had 100 people on the roster, it would be different than
Absolutely.
where we're at also.
Mhm.
Do you think it's excessive for someone that has a full-time job?
No,
2 hours a month?
I'm just curious.
not at all. I go to most of the trainings because I enjoy them.
Yeah.
I missed the last one because it got
Mhm.
bumped up because of the
You were
snow
rushing
when I
a
was
little
in
bit.
Littleton, so
Yeah.
we couldn't go for it. I normally start at 7. 7:30 is my bedtime, so I sacrificed just to go down. But, no, I like the training. I think it's valuable. I think in person is important. I think there are things involved with that training that can't be done so I think
Yeah.
there's a place for it.
So
frankly.
again, it's trying to find people that have available, have the interest and the dedication
Right.
and want to do it.
We've tried a lot of things, Brian. We've cut dinners, we've done a lot of things trying to get people to come. They seem to appreciate it when we do it, but at the same
Yeah.
point, it's,
Mhm.
Yeah.
sometimes you do it and there's nobody there.
It's-
And it's usually the same people.
Yeah,
It's also important for you know who your coworkers are.
sure.
Right.
You know, you might not be on a shift with somebody that you've never met, you know,
Right.
so
You know who they
it's
are.
all, it's all part of it, but I don't know what the answer is.
And some of the new equipment, I mean, look at the fabric of what it is today than when you got here. There's so many new things that didn't even exist then. And it's all stuff, unfortunately, it's all expensive stuff, it's all good stuff, but it's all stuff that requires being maintained to keep it in perfect working order.
Mhm.
And then you have things like the Lucas, which is a CPR machine, that you really have to be extraordinarily proficient in to have it work. Do they work? They do. But you gotta be able to deploy it rapidly and effectively and get it on within 10 seconds. You gotta be able to look at a patient and know where to size it, where to fit it, and in 10 seconds it's working.
Okay.
And if you can't get people to come and train together with that, with each other and cross over, it's really hard to get.
Why are the meetings at 7? Could that be a deterrent, having them
Well,
at
it
7?
could be. The deterrent used to be it was not on Wednesdays either. We've tried changing days, we've tried changing times. We went from 2 meetings a month to 1, and they still don't come, and it's the same people. I don't know why.
I know we've moved it around a few times, it hasn't
And that
changed
hasn't
much.
changed.
Yeah.
Personally, if I'm working somewhere else for the day and finish up at 5, 6 o'clock, I'd rather have a half hour or an hour to, especially if I'm teaching, get it all set up and ready.
Yeah,
Yeah.
7's easier, I think, when people work downtown, maybe
Yeah.
not Conway or Conway, if they work till 5 or 5:30, by the time you get home, it's,
Right.
so that seems to be how that evolved. I mean, it's just, everything has a purpose.
Updates on training.
Yes, so I just finished up the Instructor 2 class that was offered by the state to help try to bring some better and more fleshed out training back to the department. So that is that. And then the EMR program that I think we talked about last meeting
Yeah.
got posted up on the state website. It's going to be running from September 21st through October 26th. It is Wednesday and Friday evenings from 6 to 10 p.m. and then Saturday days from 9 to 3 p.m.
Could you say that all over time? It started on September?
It is September 21st
Uh-huh.
to October 26th.
Wendy's
And it is
and
Wednesday and Friday evenings from 6 to 10,
Mhm.
and then practical skills days on Saturday from 9 to 3 p.m.
And how many are you, what would be your goal on getting participants there?
So it's a state-run course, so I'm not 100% sure. I think it's 15
Mhm.
is their maximum.
and you did this recent, a couple of years ago, right, or maybe before?
I think somebody separate from the state came in and did an EMR course.
Does it generate volunteers?
So their program, like I said, it wasn't with the state. I think their pass rate was not as high as the state courses typically are. They had 1 or 2 people who were already firefighters who got trained with the Bartlett Fire Department. The EMR curriculum is significantly cut back from the EMT
Right.
scope. and what
I
they can
realize
do.
they can't go out on their own, but.
Right, so it really fits better working, say, with a fire department, something like that, being an initial on scene, extra set of hands, something like that, versus riding in the ambulance.
Gotcha.
But in that sense, it's definitely a good way to get your foot in the door, get interested in that, and then go on from there.
Cool.
So what are we doing to promote this for our purposes, like for selfish purposes?
So the state has it listed on their website up there. I'm going to let all the local fire chiefs know and to put it out that way. At our next meeting that we have, fire and EMS chiefs, and then as far as locally, I honestly haven't thought about it that much yet. The registration opens on June 1st,
Okay,
but we definitely could do like flyers at the school, at patches, things like that.
Yeah.
Town hall.
Jackson E-News.
Yes, absolutely. Any kind of communication that you can get,
Mhm.
and even tap into Nancy if you want to help design something, or to, you know, since she was participating and stuff, she
Yeah.
can design something
The
and
state.
get that out there.
The state typically creates
Yeah.
flyers for
Yeah, they
them.
will.
Um,
If we can
They're putting it
personalize it and
Yeah.
definitely share it wherever,
Mhm.
so just make sure you keep us in the loop on
Yeah.
that.
And
So the registration
to go
notice
back
and
to
stuff.
one other thing,
Yeah.
to go back to training, the class that Tom is taking, and will be done soon, he'll be advanced EMT, and that is paid for by the state of New Hampshire. We paid for it initially, but they will reimburse us for the cost of the class and the cost of his,
Sure.
is taking his exams,
What's Tom's last name?
class.
Is there anyone else that's interested in that then, if the state will pay for it, or will they only pay for?
It's kind of time intensive, so,
Mhm.
you know, again, if you work, you know, Tom's lucky that he's retired,
Yeah.
or semi-retired, so he can go I think it's 2 days a week or 2 nights a week, and he's doing it locally, or he's doing it in Freiburg, so
Mhm.
it's,
Well,
yeah. But still, if you're working,
Yeah.
that's really difficult to do. It would be great because we could get, you know, we could get paid for, and we could get people to do it.
Okay. Damn, these jobs that people have.
Oh.
And actually, there's a program too, that if someone is not an EMT and they're becoming one, then they will pay for their class, but they also pay their salary. If we could get people that would commit to that.
But part of that is them talking to us before they take the class.
Right, of course,
That's
yes,
a big
of
part of
course.
that.
But it's also, that's over a month long,
Yeah.
and generally 5 days a week, so.
All right, new ambulance.
2026,
Oh, it says Q1 2025,
Six
so
or five?
it's 6.
26,
I thought it was
first quarter
26.
2026.
I thought we were still
That's what
2
it's always been.
years away. If it comes early, we'll be happy.
Mhm.
Chain of command on medical 911 calls.
So Chief Courier was going to, and I think he did reach out to the fire marshal to get a little bit of clarification on that, on some of the points that we've been rubbing back and forth on. My understanding is he reached out. I think we made some progress there on some of the non-fire involved calls and whether or not he has command of calls that he wasn't called to. We've still had 1 or 2 minor incidents, but nothing major.
So what have you guys come to agreement on?
So he was under the impression the last time we talked over the summer that as the fire chief, he was in charge of any emergency call that happened in the town of Bartlett. I believe that after talking to the fire marshal, he understands at this point that any purely medical calls that they're not called to are ours and not under his command, for lack of a better word. The state RSAs and regulations do give the fire chief a good amount of authority and control over things, especially when it is a joint operation, partially just because at the end of the day, somebody needs to be
Yeah.
at the head. But there's still been a couple, again, those minor issues with joint command and who should be talking on the radio mostly.
Gotcha.
And what is the guidelines for that? Who's supposed to be talking on the radio?
So the state wants us to use the National Incident Management System, which is something that came out of 9/11 and large-scale incident management.
Which is known as NIMS.
The ideal for that would be a joint command on scenes, so somebody from each agency present, basically making up the command system and the oversight. His belief is when we're at, say, a car accident, that he would be the scene command and any requests, period, to dispatch would go through him. we feel like it would make more sense if we're, say, calling a second ambulance for us to just get on the radio and ask dispatch for a second ambulance. Especially in a situation like that where it's not
And
super
also that it'd
overwhelming
be
to
our
dispatch.
end, it's not.
Right.
Yeah, this all started because he was gonna call action instead of our second ambulance, and he and I got in a tip, but you don't even have it staffed. I said, well, actually we do. It's on the way, and you don't have any fire trucks on scene yet either. So, we did get it covered and well, but it was, and that's where he called the fire marshal. And, Robbie's being too nice.
Well, I mean, I think the thing is to make sure that if you have examples or if this incident happens to right away, to make sure that it's handled and rectified right away
Right.
versus sending, we're down to about
Everybody got
98%.
taken care of.
Hmm?
Everybody got taken care of.
That's the most important thing,
Exactly.
obviously, but, you know, if there are certain circumstances
Right.
that if we have to come back to the table and talk about it further, I think knowing those specific cases would be helpful. And
And then it's like
Document.
snowmobile incidents too, where, you know, we have had an agreement with the snowmobile people. We had an agreement with Jackson for a little bit too, and that kind of blew apart a couple weeks ago. That's okay, we're learning. You know, don't depend on anybody. If you're gonna go in the woods, you're going in the woods. You'll drag your own deer out.
So Rick, if that incident were to happen again where a second ambulance was needed, who would be calling for the second ambulance?
Well, in
Have
that
you guys
particular
agreed?
case, I went to Jeff and said, I'm gonna bring our second truck in because of the NIM system. I thought that was the appropriate thing to do, and I got my head chewed off, so I said, okay.
So it
second
hasn't
truck's on
really
the way.
been, it doesn't sound like it's been resolved.
In that specific situation.
Oh, no, it's resolved. He was very nice the next couple of days after he talked to the fire marshal, because I think he told him where the bear goes in the woods. So,
So are we documenting these issues where we have these
he
conflicts?
did for a long time, I don't anymore, because it's just too many of them.
If it's a structural and command issue, I think really this is the place to discuss it.
right.
Mhm.
If it's more of a personnel issue, I'm feeling like a non-public session is more
Exactly.
appropriate. So
Exactly.
I'm starting to feel spillover and starting to feel like, should I make a motion that we enter into non-public session?
I think you've gone far enough into it, you can leave it alone.
Do you have anything you would like to add?
To that, no. I mean,
Okay.
Same as it's always been.
Again, I think communication and documentation are important.
Right,
Upcoming,
Hank?
upcoming OSHA changes.
Yes, so I don't know how familiar everybody is with OSHA regulations across the board. There's a fire brigade standard, which they are in the process of updating now. It's open to public comment at the moment. It is being expanded to include all EMS and rescue teams, which from briefly reading it might also include Jackson Police being EMS team as well.
Mhm.
I have printed off 3 copies of a general overview if anybody wants to.
And that's actually from McNeil, which is a neutral insurance company. We used to use them. They still like us, and they still let us camp onto their educational format, and they do nice programs.
So mostly just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the possible changes. Like I said, it's in public comment now, so it'll probably change at least somewhat before
I
it.
was gonna say, so these aren't changes that are already going to be made, they're
Not
proposed
immediately, they're proposed
changes? Okay,
in some form, they'll probably take effect, but
okay.
what exactly they'll look like, not sure yet.
And how do you feel about the proposed changes?
There are a lot of things involved in it, and
Okay.
I think a lot of them are
600 pages.
Yeah, it's including all of the thought behind it and everything else. It's a 600-page document.
Oh,
Because New Hampshire's not an OSHA state,
Right.
we don't know exactly where we stand. Whether we're mandated as volunteers, which probably at this point we can't even be considered volunteers.
mhm.
But we don't know where we are, that we don't know where we stand with it. It's just a heads up,
I
so.
think that might be a legal question as far as how much of this would actually apply, if it does at all, directly to us.
But the good news is, we feel we're about 70% compliant with the new changes already.
Yeah, I think a lot of
We're
the,
already doing quite a few of the things, and really OSHA's not out to try to hurt you, they're out to
Mhm.
try to make it safer for you.
Right.
And a lot of it's fire stuff. cancer things, how to take care of your laundry and that kind of stuff, so.
And what's the timing on this, like,
6
what,
weeks.
So the
Yesterday.
public comment, I believe, ends mid-June. Their thought, as far as I know, is within the next 2 years it would go into effect.
So will you keep us posted on
Yeah, we
anything
can.
that you feel like that would
Mhm.
negative and positively
Yeah.
affect all involved, and obviously if you need to tell the other departments?
Yeah, I think fire chiefs from both
police.
towns probably
Would
have
you
a
like to
good amount of
bring it
information
first?
on it as well.
I'll bring it to
I'll
you.
get some copies.
As far as highlights, it would include some station upgrades. So it would require exhaust fans for any of the bays, training facilities, so weights, treadmills, that kind of stuff, to allow people to work out on shift would be required. Yeah, physicals would be required at least every 2 years
Mhm.
to the NFPA standard, which is a whole long list of.
Which raises the price of physicals from $250 to about $1,000.
Right.
I suggest we just tell them we're not gonna play. Let's be
Well, that's the way you
proactive.
think.
Well, just,
No.
Yeah, so
the
there's
state's
a,
not a member, we're not bound by, we're not involved, the state isn't, so why should we be?
Well, that's what he
That's
just said, he
right.
was saying, we're not sure we're
We-
involved,
we don't-
so I just said,
Well, I know we're not sure, but let's let them know we are sure that we're not playing. That's my point.
there has been a large groundswell of, especially the fire side,
That's pretty
firefighters
common.
making the public comments and saying
That's
a lot of this doesn't make total sense, especially for volunteer departments.
gotcha. Keep us posted.
We're supposed to have gyms and work out. You have to work out when you're on duty, but if you get hurt, you're on your own time. So they want the public comment is this really doesn't work for us at this level. But, I mean, there's a lot of good things, and if we embrace the good things and try to work with them, they'll be fine.
Well, I think also that, yeah, we're not gonna participate in it, but if the documentation comes up with some things that we can
Right.
either improve our program, be more inclusive, make
Mhm.
things better, maybe that'll help us attract more people, who
Right.
knows? You know, we don't participate in OSHA, but look at all we do,
Mhm.
you know, then take the good. So, all right, any additional items?
I have, I'm not sure what the update is, but the rate setting for reimbursement for ambulances has gone to, I think, for the final draft to the insurance commissioner. Initially, it looked like we were really gonna get screwed, because we were only gonna get a little bit above what Medicare pays for every private
Mhm.
insurance, which would put us right out of business,
Yeah.
for sure. It looks like now that we might get a much higher rate. One of the good things is that all insurers will be required to pay us directly, or pay the provider directly rather than pay the patient, because that, we're running into that, and it's been a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these bills are $4,000 or $5,000, and they don't fork the money over. So it's
And if
been-
they do, it's probably a percent,
or
small
it might be
percentage of
$50 a
it.
month,
Yeah.
which I'd rather they do
Take
that
the
than
50
totally
and send-
blow us off.
Yeah, or pay the patient.
But they met, I think, last Friday, but I don't know exactly what got adopted.
I think they moved to pay us directly. It's the last
That's a separate bill. I just looked it up yesterday.
What is?
The direct pay is a separate bill from the insurance commissioner.
Yes, it is, but the direct pay thing.
Direct pay is a Senate bill that's been moved to
Okay.
the House.
You know the number?
I can pull it up.
Just leave it and let me know.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great.
So
You
I didn't
can
realize
send
they
us those
separated
two.
that out because it was
Mhm.
all in that same blurb.
Yeah, I think it did get separated a little bit.
Is it a House bill?
And there is a
it's
proposal to raise it
Senate.
to 800% what Medicaid pays too.
Right.
So,
I don't know, then it probably, I would guess my concern is that I don't think it's right that the insurance companies should be setting our rates.
Right.
And I don't, we've all put in our 2 cents, it's all gone. You know, there's a big contingency with the ambulance association.
Mhm.
And then they went in mass, and we don't know how it ended up initially. I guess it's out of the legislature, it's now with the commissioner, the insurance commissioner.
The direct pay for ambulance services is Senate Bill 407.
407?
Yes. And reimbursement, no, that's a Medicaid one. Yeah, 407.
Yeah, if you get information on the reimbursement one, shoot shoot that our way too, if there's anything we can do to.
Yeah, I think that's, at this point, not a bill, it's just an administrative rule with the
With
insurance
the commission, okay,
I understand.
okay. Anything else? I know we have the full-time director position on as a recurring item. I don't know that it's something we're gonna talk about tonight based on recruitment and positioning of the budget, et cetera. But I do wanna keep it on as a recurring item, especially as we head in and see how the recruiting goes, maybe through the spring.
Right.
And see where that goes.
Well, you can make a case that it becomes more important when we can't find people
Right.
because they're
Mhm.
working full-time. It really speaks to the need in some ways for a full-time director position.
Well, we are,
No, that's-
essentially, we're doing most of it.
Right.
Exactly.
Without either one of us right now, we would collapse.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so to have one person pulling a full-time
Mhm.
salary level position out of there that's commensurate with experience is something I would see as necessary.
Mhm.
Well, my concern with it is that right now, for what you would pay them, one person.
Right.
You're getting 24-hour service from these two,
mhm,
and you're not going to get that from one person.
And
You
you're
know,
not gonna have a lot
basically,
of
they're
community
gonna need
either.
2 people, minimum, full-time, in order for that to work. Just to cover the, say, the weekday day shifts,
Mhm.
and the director as the overseer of, you know, everything else. But also will have to be a responder.
And I don't dispute that, for sure, but, I mean, it all translates into, more investment
Mhm.
in the service.
mhm.
And so, not always just looking at that ambulance service as a dollars and cents budget concern,
Mhm.
which is always a concern, but
Right.
Right.
is it the primary
Maybe
one?
get
Is it the
covered
only?
side, one, between one of us.
There are other ways to look at it.
Well, I agree, I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Yeah, no, I know you're not, but I'm just
Right.
feeling like there is it a bad thing if it's costing us each town a little bit more money? Or is it a way to invest in the service?
Well, I understand where you're coming from on that. My thing is, if you look at, you're putting on a full-time administrator, I don't see the difference it's gonna make in recruiting or anything like that. I just don't. I think the 2 people that are doing the work now are doing their due diligence to the best of their ability. And to have one person, I don't think it's gonna make a difference. I really don't. I just don't see the need to have someone there purely for, well, the main part of recruiting. And that seems what comes up most of the time. And to have one person do the whole job, I think it's impossible. I really do. To have one person there on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year,
No,
I think it's
you'd
impossible.
find it hanging from the rafters.
It's impossible.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's not translating into a full-time director position in my mind. A full-time director's gonna be 40, 45 hours a week.
Mhm.
And that means there are other people that we need to step up. I think that in retrospect, when we came up with a full-time fire chief 5 years ago, and I only speak for Jackson, but it grew the program. We had 20 firefighters at our March training. And that was not the case when we were limping along with a part-time chief and inspections and everything else that came from it. So it was an investment that worked out for us. And I'm not saying it would be the same with this, but I think we have to start somewhere.
Mhm.
And it's tricky for me because I am an auxiliary EMT, so I almost feel like in some ways recusing myself
Well,
from
right.
this.
Okay.
Yep.
I told you.
Are you?
No, I almost feel like I should.
Almost.
And I may, I mean,
Let me know.
if something came to a vote, you know, I probably would. I've recused myself in select board meetings before on this topic. It's tricky, but
You can try it before you sign around.
all I share is that it worked out really well for our fire and rescue station.
But I think with that standard, you're not talking just, you're talking a director, but then you're talking 2 managers. So you're actually expanding the leadership in the department. Because you're gonna have someone who's totally in control, but you're gonna have 2 managers, whether you will call them a night shift and a day shift, whatever, to actually run it. I think that's where that would be headed.
Right.
I think the whole structure, the whole culture of the service would have to change. And again, it's on here as we need to keep our minds on this because we try new things and they're not working. We're not building the staff, we're not building the
Well,
volunteers.
it's
What do
A
we do?
little
next?
bit true, but a little bit not true. You gotta vet your sources a little bit. We do have new
I thought you
people,
guys
we have new people coming in. And it's just not the flood of people who wanted to be able to stay because when they tried to get licensed here, it took 7 or 8 months and they ended up working in a
So
different state.
whatever the reason is,
But
we're
if
not
you
getting
go to-
the results that we wanted to when we first put the staff out. Now, we're 3 months into it, so I'm not gonna give up on that
Right.
saying it's a failure or anything. But I think every time we talk about changing things, you have to give it time to
Right.
see if
I
it's
agree.
going to be impactful and everything.
Absolutely.
A full-time director position would totally change the way the structure is for recruiting,
Maybe
for
better, maybe
organization,
worse.
for training. Exactly, there would be
Yeah.
pros and cons to
Right.
it. So it's something we have to keep in mind.
What do you want to
and
have
consider.
happen?
I want to have a better staffed volunteer
Okay.
program,
That's
so.
really nice, Barbara.
But
You
wait,
haven't missed a call in a
Excuse
couple
me,
of years.
can I finish what I was going to say?
If you let
So-
me next time.
Excuse me?
Go ahead, speak.
I wanted to say that I think it would be nice to have more volunteers, so there are few people that are working 60 hours a week or whatever. Even though you're wonderful at your jobs and you're so very dedicated, you get burned out and you can't sustain that forever. You're the most knowledgeable, you're always the ones that are there, but it would be really wonderful to have a lot more depth in the staff that we have. And that's all I'm saying, it would be wonderful to have that right now. We don't have that. We're trying different ways to recruit and staff and also to overcome cultural problems and differences and all those things make it a difficult thing. We're getting a lot of great service for what we pay for, so
You are.
that's what my hopes would be.
And I think initially, when we, for this year's budget, we came up with a large amount to kind of soften the blow if it came about, so that we wouldn't go from, $90,000 a year payroll
Right,
up to,
400,000 or something, that would be
so
fair.
I think that was part of the plan, was to make that a little bit more palatable once it comes down the road,
Mhm.
if it ever does.
All right. Next meeting is going to be here on July 9th at 4:30. And we're kicking around whether or not we say immediately following the select board for some of our meetings, but I know you guys are, 4:30 is the earliest you can all get here, correct? Pretty much? Yeah.
What about you? And for a July meeting, what's the earliest you could get?
4:30.
Okay, yep, so we'll leave it at that.
Full-time over there.
Yeah, and then for the dates for the last 2 meetings of the year, can you get your select board dates to us and we'll put those on for the minutes, because I think the first 2 are in Jackson, so we would have October and the December, January budget time. So if you can get those, and then we would have those immediately following your meetings. So those would be like 5:30, I think, right? All right, any public comment? No. All right,
If the walls could talk.
it is
I
5:23.
hear them
I will
sometimes, you
make a
don't.
motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much